Once, many years ago, there were two kingdoms, and the two kingdoms were separated by a border. They were enemies. There had been harsh words, there had been threats, there had been skirmishes, there had been bloody battles. They were enemies. But none of this even entered the consciousness of a poor grass cutter whose name was Wali Dad. He lived in a little hut, and the truth was that the hut was right on the border. But if you had asked him which side, he wouldn't have been able to tell you. He lived a very simple life. Every day he took his scythe and he went out and cut grass, and then he bundled it and took it to the village to sell for animal fodder. And every day he made 30 coins, 10 to buy food, 10 to buy other necessities, and the final 10 he would put in a clay jar that he kept beneath his bed. But one evening he got to thinking, I wonder how many coins are in that jar. So he pulled the jar out, emptied it out onto the floor, and he was surprised. It was a very large pile of coins. What am I to do with these? He said to himself. So the next day he put all of the coins into a cloth bag, slung it over his shoulder, and walked into the village, where he entered the shop of the jeweler. He put that bag of coins on the jeweler's counter and he said, what can I get with these? The jeweler said, I have the perfect thing. And he brought out a beautiful solid gold bracelet. I'll take it, said Wali Dad. And so he left the jeweler's shop with a beautiful solid gold bracelet. When he got home, he put that bracelet on his wrist and he admired it. But then he thought, wait, what am I doing with this bracelet? I didn't need the coins and I don't need a gold bracelet. The next day he went to see a friend of his, a merchant, and he said, I wish to give a gift. Do you happen to know of a young woman who is noble and kind? I do, said the merchant. Yes, the princess in the kingdom to the east. She is not only noble and kind, but also beautiful and intelligent. Wonderful, said Wali Dad. The next time you see her, please give her this bracelet with my compliments. Amused, the merchant agreed. And a few days later, he was giving the bracelet to the princess in the kingdom at the east. She admired the bracelet, but then she said, Wali Dad, I don't believe I know him. Who is this Wali Dad? Well, the merchant chose his words carefully and said, he is a man who appreciates nobility and kindness. Well, then I must send him a thank you. And so the merchant returned to Wali Dad with a thank you gift of a camel loaded down with piles of fine silks. When Wali Dad saw that, he thought, I didn't need the coins, I didn't need the bracelet, and I certainly don't need silks or a camel. Please, tell me, do you know of a young man who is noble and kind? I do, said the merchant. The prince in the kingdom to the west. He is not only noble and kind, but also brave and strong. Excellent, said Wali Dad. Keep some of the silks for yourself and take the rest and the camel to that prince. And so the merchant did. When the prince saw the gift that had been given to him, he said, Wali Dad, this time the merchant was ready. Yes, he is a man who appreciates nobility and kindness. Well, I must send him a thank you. And so the prince sent the merchant back with 20 of the finest horses in the kingdom. When Wali Dad saw those, he was beside himself. Please take 2 of the horses and take the rest to the princess in the kingdom of the east. The merchant agreed. When the princess got those, she sent back a thank you gift of, 20 mules laden down with silver. Oh, Wali Dad said, don't stop, take 2 of the mules and the silver, take the rest to the prince. All right, agreed the merchant. But when he came back from that prince, he brought 20 camels with golden stirrups, 20 horses with golden bridles, 20 elephants with golden chairs on their backs, and 20 liveried servants to take care of all of them. This is worse and worse, said Wali Dad. Just take them to the prince. Keep whatever you want for yourself. The merchant said, no, I can't. He said, really, this is the last time, please. Reluctantly, the merchant agreed. And when the merchant was out of sight, Wali Dad walked out of his hut and down the path, intending never to return. But he heard a voice behind him, and when he turned around, he saw 2 fairies from paradise, magical creatures. How is it with... Oh, worse and worse, said Wali Dad, such misfortune. Wali Dad turned around, and when he got to where his hut had been, he saw that it had changed. Now there was a magnificent palace, beautifully appointed, with servants to take care of everything. And as he walked through the door, he found his own familiar worn clothes replaced with fine, elegant garments, and even a large turban with a jewel right in front. Oh, at Wali Dad. Well, soon there was a servant who came and said, "There is a caravan approaching from the east." And another servant said, "There's a caravan approaching from the west." And another servant said, "No, there are two caravans approaching, one from the east, one from the west." And why was that? Well, the princess had been talking with her parents. What does this Wali Dad person want? And her mother, the queen, said, "Perhaps he wishes to marry you. You should at least meet him." Meanwhile, the prince was talking with his parents. Who is this Wali Dad and what does he want? The king said, "Perhaps he wishes to establish a trade agreement. You should at least meet him." And so the two were coming in caravans to meet Wali Dad. Well, Wali Dad took a deep breath and prepared to meet his visitors. But when the kings in the two caravans saw each other, oh, it was not a happy meeting. The king from the kingdom to the west said, "What is the meaning of this? Is it to be war?" And he raised his scimitar. Meanwhile, the king from the kingdom to the east said, "I knew that I should have brought my army." And he raised his scimitar. But Wali Dad stepped out and said, wait, but come inside and talk things over. We will have some refreshments." And so the two kings went inside the palace and began to talk. And they discovered that both of the kings wanted the very same thing. They both wanted peace and prosperity and happiness for everyone in their kingdoms. And in fact, they couldn't even remember why they'd been enemies for so many years. And so peace was declared. Meanwhile, outside the palace, the prince and the princess, they were gazing at each other. And as so often happens in stories like this, they fell instantly and deeply in love. They decided they wanted to be married. And so not only was peace declared, but love was declared as well. And so they agreed to be married, and both caravans returned to their respective kingdoms to make wedding plans. When they were out of sight, Wali Dad heaved a sigh and began to walk down that path again. And again, he ran into the Perrys. "How is it with you, Wali Dad?" said the Perrys. "Oh, everything turned out better than it might have. I'm grateful, and I know I should thank you, but say no more, Wali Dad. We know the desires of your heart. Turn around and you will find all will be as it should be." And so Wali Dad turned around, and when he got to the palace, it disappeared. And in its place was his own humble shack. And when he walked through the door, his elegant garments disappeared and were replaced with his own familiar worn clothing. Wali Dad smiled and said to himself, "I must take my scythe and go out and cut some grass so that I can sell it tomorrow in the village." Well, a few weeks later, there was a great wedding. The prince and the princess were married. It was a very elegant affair. Of course, they sent an invitation to Wali Dad. He did not attend in person. He sent them both his very best wishes. But he did not send a gift, for he knew all too well what that could lead to. And so everyone in this story, the prince, the princess, both kings, the queens, everyone in both kingdoms lived happily, simply, and peacefully ever after. And may we all do the same.